Dave, how's things been?
Good.
What have you been up to? What have you
Uh,
been thinking about?
I'm now the director of social media and digital communications for the Society for UAP Studies.
Oh, cool.
So I'm working to lead the way to the development of UAP studies as a legitimate academic field, which is pretty interesting. It's a little bit different angle. I mean, I've been doing a lot of like UAP scholarship stuff, but this is interesting because you have a lot of what's going on in public. You've got like Gary Nolan and the Soul Foundation and a bunch of other stuff like that. But the Society for UAP Studies is a learned society, so it's a lot more focused on scholarship and academia and that conversation and building those grounds. So it's been a different set of people that I haven't really interacted with as much. So it's been fun.
Isn't it worrying that I remember we spoke about this before about academia getting its claws into the UAP topic and it kind of ruining the topic somewhat.
So that it's interesting because like a lot of my interactions have been with scholars in the United States, but Mike Safone, who is the director and kind of founder of the Society for UAP Studies, has a like hyper international focus. So the network there is much more diverse, and it's folks in South America, Europe, all throughout Europe. We actually had a meeting earlier this week with UAP Czech, which is I believe out of France, or at least a lot of their directors are in France. So I'm going to mispronounce the name, but GAIPAN or GAIPAM, which is the French UFO organization that's kind of liaisons with their government, and did a massive study that led Leslie Keane to get interested in this stuff at a deeper level. Folks from there, people in Australia, folks in Asia, folks in North Africa, folks in throughout the Middle East and that. So it's a much more diverse kind of group of people than the United States is just like, so no matter how much folks from the States want to like look outside of their world bubble, like our culture is just so thick that it's hard to see through. And so, a lot of the scholars that I know, like Jeff Kripal and Diana Pasulka, like it's not that they want to solely focus on kind of conversations in the US, but it's just so I don't know, I don't want to call it an echo chamber, but it's a sort of closed conversation. So this has been exciting to see, a lot wider view of what's going on, and also kind of make an effort to bring that into the conversation too, and to start to pull that information more in. There's a lot of, the conversation with UAP Czech was interesting because there's a lot of things that papers that have been published, research that's going on, that other folks don't know about, and they're asking the same questions. So one of the things obviously is going to be to try to build those bridges and get that conversation a little bit more grounded, and a little bit more interconnected. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I watched the documentary, the Netflix series, I think it's Encounters, is it called?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yep.
Recently, and that had Diana Pasulka. She was involved with that. She
Yeah.
seems very unconvinced when she first appears on camera. She's like, I don't know what you want me to say.
I was a brief consultant on that thing too. I got.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Are they doing another one?
They were planning on it. I haven't heard anything in addition. They'd reached out for the next one, but I don't know what. And I'm not the best. I'm usually terrible when journalists contact me because I'm all like, here's a bunch of details, and they're like, okay, we just wanted like an abstract with a UFO, and I'm like, here's the history that goes back to like 1947 and minute detail. Like, no, okay, we don't want any of that. I was like, I know. So yeah, I don't know that they're gonna. I mean, it's weird with this stuff because I don't know why there's not more. Two, I don't know why every documentary. Encounters was a little bit different. I was happy with what Jan, the director, did. He was able to kind of pull it out of like the Discovery Channel talking head kind of vibe, but every documentary looks the same. I mean, it's the same people too. And it's, that was one of the things with this one, the one that you watched. when I was talking to them, I was like, you got to get some people in here, get some like humans. Enough of the talking heads. Like, don't put Nick Pope on it. No offense, Nick. I mean, just like get some more grit to what this actually is. And I think they attempted to do that. How successful they were. I enjoyed it, but I mean, I think there's different places you can go with this stuff, and I'm really surprised that people haven't. Because right now, there's obviously Spielberg is putting money into this stuff. You had J.J. Abrams, which may have been a Spielberg production. I don't remember, but J.J. Abrams did that UFO documentary, which Diana was also in. There's people out there doing it. You have James Fox, who's done a bunch of. He did a new one, and you've got the Disclosure one from. Is it Mike Farah, the guy who did Ready Player One? So he's got one that's being shopped around right now. But it's just weird because people, like Rogan and Tucker Carlson and a bunch of podcasters are really focused on the UAP thing, and they're bringing it out. But like nobody seems to be really grasping that this is a time, and it's going to be a short time period, short window where people are interested, and you could really get some interesting things going, but we don't. It's probably just going to be more documentaries that look the same.
Yeah, the kind of collective unconscious, the collective attention span is. It's maybe already starting to wane a little bit. Did you see the thing about the pyramid?
I did, yeah.
What pyramid?
The middle pyramid in Giza.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it came from was it from an academic article, or was it from a pseudo academic article?
No,
I couldn't quite tell.
It was legitimate research. They did a ground scan using whatever
SAR, I think it's
yes.
called.
Yeah. They did it, and they did a ground scan and found structures under the pyramids.
It's just one of the pyramids, though, isn't it? I think the middle one.
Yeah, just the middle one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is it possible that it's just foundations? I don't know, because a lot of people I keep seeing, they're saying, "Oh, this is like some energy, like collection," or like it's I don't really know much about it. All I know is that Andrew Collins has gone crazy about it.
I saw that.
Yeah. But he seems to be on constant apology tours at the moment. I'm not quite sure what for, but I keep hearing that he's on apology tours a lot for publishing not the best material. Maybe I don't know. I shouldn't talk about it really because I don't really know. But I just keep hearing that.
What's an apology tour?
I think he keeps going on to podcasts to kind of backtrack on some information that he put out in a book or something. But I think he's done that a couple of times. I don't think that's the first time that's happened. Okay. So
his stuff on like the plasma balls and the plasma orb things. Forget what the name of the book is, but that's pretty good. Like I actually enjoy that stuff. And
I like The Black Alchemist. I thought that was it's a rip-roaring read at least. Have you ever read that before? His sort of psychic quest across England.
No, I was interested in it, but there's so much stuff, and yeah.
It was. I don't know, Darragh, have you ever read any Andrew Collins? Or?
Yeah, I had him on a couple of months ago. He was on with the Karan Tepe work that he just recently released, and like it's an astonishing site. Karan Tepe is something else. Like the stuff that they found there, like I don't know if you guys are familiar with some of the stuff that they found there, like more advanced carving than say at Globeke Tepe, and he's kind of hypothesizing kind of a shamanic proto religion off the back of kind of the architecture that he's found there, or that he's recorded, when visiting the site, and he's been going there for 20 years. Like I was out to Globeke Tepe about 2013, I think. Went out.
Oh wow!
I mean, it's an astonishing place when you realize the age of it. So yeah,
he definitely walks the walk, old Andrew Collins, doesn't he? He definitely goes out to these places. I'll give him.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I think he did. He discovered a cave as well, didn't he, or something, or some sort of structure underneath one of the pyramids. He predicted it would be there, and they found it.
Yeah.
And he gets no credit for it, apparently.
Yeah.
I think with the idea of like pseudo archaeology and stuff, you gotta kind of be careful, because like I don't think Andrew fits into that mold necessarily. He may talk about some of the things that like butt up against what that critique is, but he seems more careful. I mean, like, and seeing like his seeing his talks and stuff like that, he seems careful. He's willing to come out and say when he's made a mistake, you know. He obviously leans heavy on speculation, but you know, I mean, I think that if this were a different time period, he might be treated differently. You know, I mean, he's kind of just doing like an older style of scholarship that they don't do anymore, but it can be fruitful, you know. And I don't. He seems like he's like the least egregious, I think, at least.
I
don't know his work like in depth, you know, but I've never hit on anything where it's been just like, ooh, like you're really just, you know, like a complete huckster, you know. This seems, he seems honest in his explorations, you know.
He doesn't go woo woo, does he? Particularly,
he might a little. There might be. I mean, depending on where your woo meter, you know, calories. I think he clicks into it, but
the woo tolerance zone. Yeah.
Like his plasma UFO stuff, you know, is actually kind of important right now, because that's coming back into the UAP conversation. And not a lot of people have done that research. There's a guy, Harley Rutledge, who was a physics professor in Missouri, that actually did like a study of plasma orb type encounters while actually having some himself. There was a flap in Missouri. But outside of that, and then like Trevor James Constable with his like sky critters, and James Gaddis, so kind of in like the borderland science research stuff. Not a lot of stuff on the plasma intelligences idea. And Andrew covers that in a book. So, you know, and that was coming out of research, I believe, that I'm forgetting his name. Devereaux had done with a thing called the Dragon Project, which was looking at monolithic sites in England and that, and whether or not what altered states of consciousness, monolithic sites, and you know, like how does that correspond with each other? And they were looking for like earth energies and stuff like that. And I think Andrew might have been a part of that, or you know, was attendant to that research, and that was a legitimate project too that had DARPA money in it. So
he's I wasn't sort of slagging him off, more that it was just I sort of noticed a lot of people jumping on this kind of and it seemed to be he was mentioned in it all the time. So, but this idea that there's like coils around these things in the ground, and there's some kind of like energy transmitter or something, and I was like immediately getting kind of Ancient Aliens vibes from a lot of the posts that were popping up.
Yeah, well, I think I mean, I certainly kind of, you know, you see it it came up quite quickly in the more kind of woo woo corners of the internet, but kind of I saw when Andrew had shared it on Instagram. Like it's fascinating though to see what's there, you know, and like even if that is just quite simply an enormous foundation, that in itself is astonishing as an achievement, you know. There's two bits to it. There's all the cylindrical stuff, you know, with the kind of the spiral going down.
There's a chamber as well, isn't there? Some sort of square chamber section that's meant to resemble the King's Chamber or something.
Yeah. There's chambers that resemble the King's Chamber, but there's something else as well, saying like beneath those cylinders from memory now, so pinch of salt, but there's some sort of like under cavern or some description under the cylinders. You know, which is kind of been touted as like a, you know, as an underground city, which doesn't help the case, but maybe there is some sort of like cavern under there, you know.
Maybe we finally found Lemuria. We finally found it, Dave.
I mean, I want to believe, you know.
That's I think like the fun stuff, like this is fun when you just like withhold opinion until like more comes out, you know, because like right I'm sitting with the fact that like it's a giant like energy device, you know, just like resonating in the desert. And whether or not that's true, like we don't know. So like I'd rather, you know, just live in that existence for a little bit until it gets all.
Have you ever seen this? There's a thing in Iraq where there's literally a hole. You know, we have like a magnetic field around the Earth. There's one point in Iraq where there's like a sort of cutout almost, like it's like a funnel that comes down. If you look at the graphs of the magnetic field in the area, there's just a big gap all the way down. So there's this one point in Iraq that we know of where it's basically like there's no magnetic field for this very small area. And I often wonder what that's about. You know, why is there not more east? Well, maybe because it's always at war, or there's always like missiles flying there. But yeah, there's a lot of conspiracy. It's starting to appear, that one at the moment, in the conspiracy sphere, and but it's actually based on actual research. But it's interesting because it's almost like a point. If you wanted to contact someone, you know, outside of the planet, what better place where there's no magnetic field blocking you from transmitting out into space? It's like, it's very interesting that it's not been more covered, actually, that it's, and why hasn't, you know, you can go to Iraq. A friend of mine went there recently on like a, what do they call it, danger tourism. He went there and went but yeah, apparently it was fine. And then the day after he left, I think Israel started hurling missiles at them, but so he got a bit lucky. But yeah, no, it's interesting that there's still tons of stuff we haven't really sort of explained away yet.
Yeah, there's stuff about like the round towers in Ireland around that. Like there's a guy, Philip Callahan, who was saying that the kind of the round towers, if you're familiar with those, they all tend to be on kind of monastic sites. That they act as natural antennas for like accumulating magnetic energy, you know. And again, pretty woo woo, but there it seems to be, from what research that I'm aware of, there are kind of anomalous readings around the towers, you know, like but it kind of begs the question: okay, were the towers built to create that, or is it just a weird side effect of them being created? You know, it's hard to say, but like you know, we don't know why these things were built. Like we have, like, the whole thing when I was growing up, the whole thing was like the doorway for these round towers tended to be like 15 foot off the ground, and the whole hypothesis was when Viking raiders were coming, they take all the valuables of the monastery, take them up to the round tower, and pull the ladder up after them. And that was kind of the theory that was proposed when we were kids, you know. But these are Vikings who have the engineering capability to build the most sophisticated seafaring craft of the era at the time. They're quite aggressive. To be like stumped by a doorway being 15 foot off the ground.
And your people conveniently stuck in a round tower that you can just light a fire at the bottom.
Exactly. I mean, legit, you could just get a Viking to give a piggyback to another Viking, and they'd be at the door. You know, so it's like there's been some kind of not exactly watertight theories, I think, to begin with.
I've noticed, talking about woo, I don't know if any of you lot have seen this, but have you noticed the return of the anti-EMF sort of pendants that people have been shilling recently?
For a while. Like I had a great time period where like all the ads I was being served were like for that lamb clothing brand, which is like anti-EMF, and then also the those little pendant things. I love it.
So is that lamb LAMB or LAM?
LAMB, yeah, that was the name of the brand, and they sold like beanies that would protect you from like electromagnetic.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, and
underwear. Gotta get me one of those.
It's get me protected. You know, I think they sold cell phone covers as well. You know, which would have some use. You know, I guess the other stuff does too. I don't know. Well, who knows? I'd rock an
anti. If it's to block 5G and you get a phone case, doesn't that
do what?
Negate? Doesn't it like block the phone signal?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can't use the phone when you're in the thing, but it also allows it so that like it's like your own private skiff. Like you put your phone, like if you're going to bed, you put your phone in it, or like if you don't want to be constantly recorded, you know, when you're doing it, blocks.
Which happens to all of us, you know. So
yeah,
we're always being listened to by the.
I mean,
actually, I'd say the phone. Technically, the phones do.
Yeah,
always.
I mean that's the thing, you know. So like, if you don't want that invasion, it's weird because like there is some like legitimacy to it, you know, and then it's just the weird marketing cultural end of it. I mean, like with the constant monitoring and stuff like that. I mean, the fact that we are being continuously recorded, you shove that information into like an AI and it does a sentiment analysis on you. You can have a full psych profile done. Now, is everything in the world being targeted with like high end, you know, like biocognitive tracking? Like probably not, you know, but the potential is there, especially if you have an automated system. I don't know. It's weird. All the kind of tail end of this stuff is not good. Whether or not it's actually implemented or, you know, ever it comes to that point is another question. But the potentials, I mean, because you can take like 10 years ago or probably longer, you could take sentiment analysis of somebody's blog and you could do a complete psych profile on them, and then you would be able to replicate what they wrote, how they wrote, you know, and even predict behaviors, you know. So like that in terms of like a weaponized product is pretty intense. And then when you see how it's just kind of haphazardly used as a marketing tool, you know, with like geocaching and all the rest of it, you know, I mean, we're constantly inundated with that stuff, you know. How paranoid you want about it, though.
What was the cool version of geocaching called? There was like another something similar to geocaching where it would like randomly select a point for you to go and visit. Randonautica?
Yeah,
random.
Random.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
Is that still a thing? Do people still? I remember lots of YouTubers were
all the
making horror content out of it a lot of the time.
Yeah. Well, it got weird. Like Joe and I, Matheny and I had warned them too before they got big. Like it was right before they hit, I think 2 million users or something like that. We had a conversation with them, and we're like, you know, the kind of technology that you're working with and the narrative around it and all of that. There's not an example of this kind of stuff being implemented without it getting like significantly strange and usually detrimental. And they were like, you know, that's fine. Nick Hinton, one of the co-founders, is now an Orthodox Christian, having gone through an arc of paranoia. And no offense to Nick, you know, I mean, but he had gone pretty deep into the conspiracy stuff. Now he's like an ardent Orthodox Christian, Eastern Orthodox, and I don't know if he has like a lay ministry or something like that, but all his posts and everything are on that. And then the other founder, Joshua Lingfeld Fetter, sorry Josh, I forgot your last name. He's no longer with Randonautica. There was like investments and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know if the app itself is still running, but I mean, it was that murder thing where the people had gone to the spot that they were told, and they found a dead body that like
right.
Was in a bag. Yeah, it was like
it was in a suitcase. And the interesting thing about that is that when you do Randonautica, you set an intention, and their intention was to find cash. And in fact, one of the bodies that was found in the suitcase, the person's nickname was Cash, which adds this whole other dark element to it. And then you have to think about these kids that were just like playing a game, and now all of a sudden they're waiting for the police to arrive because they thought they were going to open up this suitcase and maybe there would be money in it, right? That's what they thought. And that's not what they found. And there's the added trauma on top of that, of the family members of these people who were found having this media circus around their loved ones being known as, the Randonautica suitcase murders. Those are real people.
Yeah,
it's mad. I think I was put off it because there's this like selection of YouTube channels. I can't remember what they're called now, but all they do are these sort of videos where we go to Alistair Crowley's house and do a Ouija board, and then they go, oh, I can feel the dark energy, you know, those kind of channels. But it's like a whole new breed of them. They're really young, and they keep going to this one place that's meant to be Crowley's house up in Cornwall. Crowley never lived, well, he briefly lived in Cornwall during the war, but not there. Anyway, but yeah, so all these people were using Randonautica, making hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos. And so I was like, is it worth me actually looking into this properly? But it sounds like there was that murder, that was sort of interesting. Me. I was like, okay, that's a bit strange. But has there been any other kind of notable?
I used it once. Well, I've used it a couple of times, but the first time that I ever used it, it brought me to like a street pole, and it had a sticker on it that said "Create or Suffer," and then it had another sticker on it that was like a little horned demon face with like sharp teeth. So that was my Randonautica experience.
That's the kind of stuff, right? Like that was being reported on TikTok and all the rest of it was because people were
right.
really weird, kind of like potentially unnerving, you know, up to the point of, as you said, like completely that's just pure trauma, you know, the finding a body in a suitcase. And then it got looped into the whole narrative of mind control and everything that always gets associated with that stuff. A lot of doubts cast on like Josh and Nick, but I, you know, having known them a little bit, being acquainted with them, like they weren't, you know, like arch mind controllers. Josh is really obsessed with random number generators and the effect of consciousness on that, and just designed this app and gamified it, you know. So there was nothing nefarious in their purpose. But it got weird, you know, like Willow, like your experience with the, you know, because how do you interpret that, right? You got the little demon face and everything.
Right. Create or suffer. That's how you interpret that.
Yeah, exactly. You got the you know, the demon sitting there like, yeah, I'll be after you, you know. And then people would have stuff like where like something like that would happen, then you do it again. And then, you know, oh, look, the same demon face is here. Like, why is that here? You know? And then
yes, actually, here's the thing. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, yeah.
I was with a friend of mine, and we were about 2 hours away from the location of the sticker that I found. And he took me on a walk in the woods, and there's like these train tracks, and it was very weird. We kept hearing the train coming, but it never came. So we were like waiting for the train to come, but it just never did. So then we finally passed, and there was this clearing with a telephone pole in it, and again, it had the same demon face sticker on it.
There you go. Like that's the kind of fun you can have with Randonautica.
Totally.
Enter into your own strange world. Or I'd
always assumed it was an ARG or something originally, because I knew Joe, because Joe had mentioned it to me. I think he was the first person to tell me about it, and I immediately is this a Joe Matheny ARG sort of thing went off in my head. So I wasn't sure for a long time, but no, it's not, is it? He's not actually involved with it, I don't think. Is it?
No, he had conversations with him because they were interested in the ARG idea and Onk's hat and that. We went on their podcast. They had it up on SoundCloud and it's no longer up there. But Joe and I went on and talked to him and warned them again, like said like, hey, like, you know, it's all fun and games until it gets seriously weird, and you're about to the point now where it's going to get seriously weird. So you might want to batten down the hatches, you know. And they didn't batten down. So they faced the thing. I mean, you can't really tell people, like nobody. It doesn't sound real when you're like, this can get weird, and I don't quite know how to tell you what I mean by weird, but you're not going to like it, you know. This isn't necessarily going to be fun, you know. Like you're going to have to rethink your reality after this, you know. And they went forward with it, and they got investors, and it all collapsed. So I don't, you know.
No, the app still seems to be on the App Store, so someone owns it.
It's a cool tool, you know. I mean, there's been a lot of like. I got contacted by somebody who has an app that does like behavioral health kind of monitoring using your phone sensors. So it can you know, tell you what your mood is, like what your hormone levels are, that kind of thing. I don't know how deep, I haven't looked deep into it, but you know, it can tell you your biomarkers and like that kind of stuff. You know, and so using something like Randonautica and like a biomarker tracker, there's a lot of cool science that can go into that, a lot of cool studies that could be done. Unfortunately, put into this kind of alternate reality gamified system, it can also get real weird and real disturbing.
Yeah, it's strange. Have you ever heard? You know, we did our show on the Cosmists a while ago. Have you ever heard of a cult in? Well, I don't like using the word cult, but a group in Ukraine called at the Alatra community.
No.
I have a
Yeah.
passing familiarity from the videos that you shared, but
Yeah,
not entirely. I know they're also doing some pyramid stuff, or they
yeah.
were.
It's interesting. So there's this group in. They seem to be somewhat influenced by the Cosmos thing, but they seem to also be constantly being closed down by the two, like the Russian and the Ukrainian special services, or like their version of like MI5 or whatever, like secret police. But they're this strange cult in Ukraine that it's kind of hard to. They seem to
What's
sort
their
of be.
gimmick?
The gimmick seems to be like I've got it all written down here. It's kind of like they seem to have this kind of. It's a bit Order of Nine Angles-ish actually in some ways, but they have this sort of figurehead that's this woman. Where is it? I've got her name here somewhere. Anastasia Novyuk, a mysterious and likely pseudonym of an author behind the core text of the Alatra movement. I've only just really started looking into this, but I wondered if you guys have seen it. And they did this thing recently where they built a pyramid device in. I think that it's meant to be in various places. One in the States, I think, one in Ukraine, and one somewhere else, maybe Russia. But they built this pyramid, and it was meant to like prove psychic abilities or something like that, and it's a physical thing. There's videos, if you sort of go diving in their website you'll find it, but I just wondered if anyone. I've not ever heard of these guys before, and the way I found out about them was in a really strange way, through a political live streamer, strangely, called Destiny, and he had this like meltdown moment on his stream. He was like replying to comments on Twitter and started to realize that the tweets were all coming from these bots, essentially. That none of the every time he looked into one of the people that were commenting on his comments, they turned out to be these really strange simulacras of real American people. So like, it would be really, and they'd always comment the same thing, post the same pictures, and they were all talking to each other. And then occasionally they'd sort of, as a group, swarm onto different political streamers or personalities.
Was this that video that you sent? I think you sent this where like it was kind of like he like got really deep into like these false kind of like bot people and like.
Yeah. And then one of them turns out to be this guy, Dr. Egon Chalokian, I think his name is. And it turns out the more you look into him, this is where the Alatra stuff comes in. He's a real person, but there's like an AI version of him giving these really long kind of 3-hour lectures where he's like dressed as George Washington, or he's like, but it's all about the sort of the kind of, it's almost like the sort of stuff people experiences say about UAPs. He's warning about, climate catastrophes and nuclear weapons and things like that. And yeah, it turns out he's like, actually, what's it where you can send, I don't know much about how this system works in the States, but you can be like a representative of a company in Washington, can't you? That kind of what's the word, where you try and influence.
You're talking about lobbyist?
Yeah, lobbyist. So you can be like he's a lobbyist for this Alatra community in Ukraine, and it's really strange. I'm still looking into it still at the moment. I was just wondering if anybody else has actually heard of them, because they're very, very strange.
That's really weird.
Yeah, they're really, really weird, and it's like her books are really strange. A lot of it's kind of conspiracy stuff, so a lot of it's very New World Ordery kind of. So that where are we? Global Awakening, the Rise of the Creative Society, Ancient Knowledge Hidden by Elites, Duality of the Human. So there's a lot of kind of like, it's a kind of combination. It almost sounds a bit like theosophy, some of it. Theosophy mixed with conspiracy. So it's nothing really new there, but it's the fact that the thing that's interesting to me about them is, why are they so
Well, their spokesperson is a digital clone of a real person, and these videos that he posts are hours long, and they're boring too, because he's not even moving or making facial expressions. It's just a digital puppet, like talking a script at you. It's not even a person. So,
why are they lobbying the American government, and why are they being targeted by these sort of secret services? That's the thing that's kind of interesting to me. It's like, they seem like quite a small group. So why is Putin interested in them and Zelensky? It seems like both of them are kind of normally you think it's one or the other, isn't it? But it's the fact that both of them are kind of interested in this group. And
it's like from my brief skim here of a BBC piece from 2022, it looks like because they're digitally altering conversations with state sponsors or state representatives, so ministers and whatnot, and they're digitally altering them to make those people appear to agree with the group's kind of ideas. So essentially, they're now running an information operation against nations, which immediately of any, that's not a good place to be,
No.
So
you don't get cults like this that much anymore, do you? You used to get. I remember back in the 60s, 70s, you used to get a lot of this kind of.
Just they're more like, look at Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is just like rife with cults. They're from just like basic, like just kind of like like sort of thin layer of ideology over people to like legitimate, like go to meetings and do weird stuff. Even Burning Man, right? Like Burning Man is in a sense a cult.
Yeah, sure.
With a bunch of executives and like money people that go out there and Burning Man it up, So it's we just don't see it's our time, so it's not as visible. You can look back at the 60s and be like, oh, that was wacky. Like, look at what those people were doing.
Mm-hmm.
But like, kind of more, it's harder to see around you and be like, oh wow, this is actually, the Christian right is a cult. Like there's multiple subcults within that. So cults are rampant right now. There was a weird sex cult with the like celebrities, but also like investing, like corporate executives and stuff like that. There's
Nexium.
Yeah,
Nexium,
yeah. And then
strange.
What was the Silicon Valley one where the people were like becoming violent? What was that? That one just came out in the news. The Zizians, I think it was.
Yeah.
So there's the Zizians, so it's pretty. We've got them. They're just...
Well, what's interesting about Allatra is that it seems like they're seeking attention by targeting streamers, and then you can access such a wider audience immediately if you target big streamers and you sort of confuse them and make a scene, and then that'll be compiled into like that Destiny video, the 15-minute highlights of him freaking out and having a mental breakdown. So now that video has millions of views. Now all of a sudden millions of people are exposed to this cult who wouldn't have been otherwise.
So it's quite a sophisticated marketing strategy.
Very.
Yeah. Think about that for your podcast.
Yeah. We need to think of some
like just start targeting, and Willow, if you do another podcast, start targeting streamers and harassing them.
Yeah.
Oh, do you think I haven't been? What do you think I'm doing here?
Is that
all marketing? All marketing for her new cult.
Yeah. No, but I actually would like to share something related to the monolith. And this relates to AI as well. A while ago, I was listening to the album Hive Mind by The Internet, which is a great album. But then I noticed in their discography, there was an album in there that looked totally out of place. And it said it was from 2009. And the band The Internet didn't form until I think like 2012, perhaps, but definitely not 2009. And this album was titled Monolith. All of the songs sounded not like the band at all. In fact, they sounded kind of AI generated. And in finding it, it was strange because the night before I had fallen asleep listening to Cosmic Trigger Part 2. And I woke up in the middle of the night right as the narrator was saying the word monolith.
Oh, weird.
So when I found that album the next day, I was like, geez, this is strange. Like, and there's a track on it about time travel. And so I went back and I looked at it just now, and I see that the name of the album has been changed to AI Monolith, and it's saying it's from 2024 now.
Weird.
But it doesn't belong on the page for this band, the internet, but like I don't know. Makes you think about the AI monolith taking place sort of within the internet right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's kind of the scary unspoken thing is how much already is deployed and how much is already like working behind the scenes for, basic stuff, just like adjusting the algorithms and adjusting what you see and the rest of it. It's kind of spooky the amount that's there without us really even recognizing that it's been sort of creeping in. And from a company, like from a corporate perspective, I mean, why wouldn't you do all this stuff? Why wouldn't you optimize for those things? And it makes it so much easier, And then the AI cult. I like the AI monolith though, because now I'm picturing these people as like full cultists for this like AI.
Oh, and totally.
It's weird too that they're running these AI clones, because if they're concerned with climate change, you probably don't want to be running a ton of bots and AI clones, because that's those use up a ton of resources.
Right. Also, the fact that the album that I was listening to was called Hive Mind.
Wasn't it? There was kind of a wave of random art installations back in 2020 of these like yeah, it's kind of like stainless steel monoliths out in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, was the art found for that?
I don't believe so. I think they there's some claims that it might be kind of an artist who's kind of since passed, but there's no kind of definitive name to them. As far as I know, I could be wrong though.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing any. I'm sure people would have been like, at least have talked about it a little bit. We lost Ken. Well, that's interesting. So you entered the monolith matrix. That's weird.
I suppose so.
With the
I also what?
Oh no, Cosmic Trigger. Like that's a strange sequence of events.
Oh right, and the day before too. I like to make video collages to try to program my reality, almost like the cut up method. Mm-hmm. And I had used clips from 2001: A Space Odyssey of the monolith.
Okay. That's awesome.
So it was like this, I don't know, 2-day long monolith event where I was like, okay, message received. That made an imprint.
That's interesting. Have you done other experiments like that with similar results?
It doesn't happen intentionally. No. I did perhaps want to bring this up. I don't know if it will get included in the show or not, given that Ken isn't here. And I don't know how I feel about it being included, but I did have my first UAP sighting in November, and that was following a string of crazy synchronicities that week. In fact, while I was listening to the Mauve Zone, one of them happened.
Oh wow.
So I had I found this book about ancient giants and the Smithsonian cover-up, and that night I'm listening to the new Mauve Zone episode, and I'm doing what I call Wikipedia scrying. They have this thing on the app where you can randomize and it rolls a dice. So I'll pick a number like 1 through 6, and when it lands on that, that's the article that I'm supposed to read. So that night I choose 4. When the dice lands on 4, that's the article that I meant. And it lands on the article for the Rephaim, which are a race of giants in the Bible, or ghosts. There's a discrepancy about what's that? Sorry.
The heroic dead.
Yeah, precisely. So it lands on that. And I'm thinking, well, gee, that's cool because I just got that book on ancient giants today. And it felt like from there, the synchronicity started to compound over the week to the point that I was again making a video collage, and I had just downloaded footage of the Disneyland ride Flying Saucers. It was like bumper cars except with hovercrafts, and it only lasted for a few years because they just like couldn't get the technology right, but the footage of the ride is cool. So I download that, and minutes later, my dog is begging me to go outside. So I pause what I'm doing and I take her outside, and there's a full moon. So the sky is very bright. And I notice silently going over my house is a huge black triangle.
Oh, yes. Awesome.
Wow.
And it was totally silent. And of course, I had this thought in my mind. Of course, I don't have my phone on me. Like, this is exactly when this would happen, is when my dog's like freaking out, like, take me out now. So I'm seeing it and I'm just thinking, so it begins.
Wow.
And then that was it. I never saw anything after that, but it certainly was strange.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. The black ones, I worked at a music store in college, and there was a game store next to it, and the kid who like was at the game store used to come into the music store and hang out a lot. And like years later, he contacted me and was like, "Hey, what do you think about UFOs?" And I gave some like, just kind of like, oh, people have experiences and perceptions and blah 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 blah. He's like, because I just saw a huge black triangle fly over my house. I was like, what? Oh man, I love black triangle sightings. Did you? And that's interesting. They had all these synchronicities kind of leading up to that too, and
right.
Then triangle thing. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it was really cool. I had also been doing some automatic writing. Um, you ever go into a K-hole and just like see and experience some weird stuff? Because I did. And a giant snake came out of a castle, surrounded by like these weird chimeras and hybrids. And this huge, massive serpent with a man face comes out and tells me that its name is Solomon and that it has messages for me. And I'm like, whoa, okay. So I didn't really think about that for a long time, but I had been doing some automatic writing with this Solomon character. And part of it was giving me, this just sounds so insane, but I'm in good company, right? Um, So I'm letting this Solomon thing like talk through me, and it's telling me that it's going to give me the gift of second sight, and that it will enable me to see things that I couldn't see before. And that also took place like a day before this UFO sighting.
Oh wow! Okay,
that's interesting. I mean, this is very similar to, I don't know if you've seen the stuff about like Jake Barber and the psionics stuff.
I'm not familiar.
So the latest wave of like official-ish people coming out talking about UFOs in the US has been a group of people that they say that they were involved in crash retrievals, and that part of the crash retrieval involves what they call psionic assets, which are basically people doing what Greer calls CE5, what Stephen Greer calls CE5, is basically some, and that and there's some talk within the community of that ability being able to be triggered by other people or to be granted, and then the narrative around that is kind of like, the suddenly being able to see things that you're not able to see. So it's interesting that your contact there said essentially what the narrative right now is within the UFO scene.
Interesting.
Being activated, having your abilities activated, and then being able to like have this contact. I know a lot of folks that like Chris Bledsoe is an experiencer that's he was recently on the Sean Ryan show and that, but he was in Diana Pasulka's American Cosmic book. She wrote about people that go around Chris leave and have experiences outside,
right.
That's interesting that you had this kind of like message that you were going to be made operational, and then you go out and have this experience with a giant black triangle.
Right. Yeah.
What else have you been looking into recently, Darragh?
I've just kind of been generally busy, busy with doing like spirit books, and kind of come to the tail end now of my digital book tour with Song of the Dark Man, and I think new projects start to kind of formulate a bit. We'll see kind of which way I'll go. I'll be thinking about doing some kind of maybe some slight film work. So myself and Peter Mark Adams have got some ideas in the fire. Maybe kind of we did a talk on Watkins in January. Maybe we might develop that kind of theme into something else about like otherworldly encounters, like spirit encounters primarily. So that might be something. But he's got about three books on the go at the moment. So quite meaty research ones. So he has to get them out of the way first.
He's always got some kind of Scarlet imprint thing going on, isn't he?
He does indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So one thing I wanted to talk about was, have any of you got? I can hear some noise in the background. Where's that coming from? Sounds like a TV or something, but no, that's weird.
I don't know. I'll close my door just in case my mom's TV is bleeding through somehow, but I don't think so.
I don't know. One thing I'm interested in is this idea of the dead internet theory. Have you heard about this before?
A little bit, yeah.
It's so it's kind of it's sort of a conspiracy theory, I suppose, but it basically says that I think it first appeared in 2012 on 4chan of all places, and it's this idea that a lot of the internet isn't actually human beings anymore. It's bots, it's AI bots essentially talking to each other. And it's kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier on. And ever since, I've kind of become a bit black-pilled with it now. I've even started to notice it on the Sitting Now YouTube comments that there's certain people that always kind of comment the same thing, or the things they comment are slightly out of place compared to the other commenters, if that makes sense. They'll be like, "Cool show, thanks for posting," that sort of thing. And you'd be like, that's weird. Why would you? I don't know.
Yeah.
It feels automated. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
So I'm starting to wonder, like, at what point does the internet just become, completely unusable? Almost, it feels almost unusable at the moment. That you have to silo off into.
I think we're getting to that. There's kind of like I don't know. I think there's like a certain critical mass of human advancement and human interactivity and communication that peaks, and then there's a trough of some description. And I think we're just over the peak of that now, and we're hitting kind of the downside of our own ingenuity, but I mean our ingenuity tends to be very lopsided in how it's how it, I guess, manifests or is rendered. There's always kind of a component missing, like the kind of philosophy behind it may not be even there. It could be just like monetize. That's it. Be damned with everything else. So there was a movement that started about 5 or 6 years ago, which was around kind of like ethical design. When people were kind of building interfaces or like sales funnels or whatever those things might be to get people to buy, to convert, to stay on site, whatever it might be, whatever the kind of transaction would be, that the kind of the UXers and the kind of user experience designers were starting to question, okay, we can, but should we? I think a lot of that came out of seeing how people were interacting, like particularly in places like Facebook. I know that's kind of, I mean, I haven't been on Facebook in years, so I don't really know what it's like anymore. Like, but seeing how it was like sucking people's time in, and it was
absolutely. Well, it used to be that you could get to the bottom of your feed and then it would run out.
Yeah.
Now it is this infinite scroll, and it almost makes me think of like what you give a livestock feed, and if you give them never-ending feed, they will eat themselves to death, which is basically what's happening. I was trying to explain this to my friend who's younger than me, that it used to be that there was a bottom of the page and you only saw your friends' posts. And this was mind-blowing. They were like, why isn't it like that now? I'm like, well, because you are the product.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
It's kind of a horrible commentary on human behavior in a way, isn't it, though, as well? That's the thing that kind of scares me a little bit, that we're so easily led into this sort of
we are, like it's like that question of like, you get the question of like, is there an overarching kind of evil force, and I don't know if there is, and it might just be what's in us, and like if the balance is tipped in a certain direction, human beings can generally do awful stuff. I mean, I don't, to counter that, we can also do amazing stuff and wonderful stuff, but we're not kind of, we're not kind of one or the other. Both those things tend to be in individuals. And by the way, by saying that, I'm not saying there isn't, kind of like a hellish, entity or intellect that has influence over us. I mean, I don't know, but like we've kind of been in digital spaces enough now to kind of take away some simple kind of like raw data from individual experiences from that of our peers to kind of see, well, there's certainly downsides to this, like people are quite atomized, I think, in how they experience. I mean, and remember, these platforms were set up to be communities, like, and what they become is something highly addictive, also can be very enjoyable. But yeah, I think it has to be treated with caution, like anything, really.
Yeah, and I think, sorry,
Go ahead.
there should be an awareness of how addictive it is as well.
Yeah, it's worrying. One thing I've been thinking about recently as well is a lot of people seem to be posting that, and you'll probably be a testament to this in some ways. A lot of people are saying that the occulture is dead again at the moment. That this idea that the internet's kind of re-killed the occulture again.
Maybe it's just hidden.
Yeah. Oh, I think maybe it's mutated slightly. I think it's actually more popular than it's ever been at the moment. I mean, the stats for my shows definitely don't spell the end of an occulture at all. There's more interest than ever.
I think internet occulture is probably where that is. Sorry, I spoke across you again.
That's okay. No, it just feels like it's like, I think maybe the old guard are just finally the old guard now, and they don't realize it. Like some people that were
maybe.
kind of, maybe the people that once the young hip occult people were now, they don't realize that they've been kind of replaced, or that the occult, maybe it's moved on slightly. Maybe it's I've been, because I keep going to places like Watkins and these bookshops, and they're full of people, and there's books being sold, and it's still very much a thing. But maybe it's just that the kind of, I don't know. I've been thinking about this a lot recently. Maybe there needs to be a new system that comes along, or something, a new magical system.
It could be, but I also think that, like, that when we look at kind of occulture from the point of things being hidden, and knowledge being hidden, systems and what have you, like pretty much everything is available online. What I think maybe one of the shifts in things is that, like, the discourse can vary wildly. Can be kind of very informed, super interesting, or it can be very volatile, and people can be very very impulsive in their communication or the reactions. Like what we, as we see kind of polarization in most things kind of now, and that kind of that atomization and polarization. Like, it seems to kind of, I don't know whether you can say it started online or it's a reflection of things. I don't know, but like, I would almost hazard that occult groups are not they're not turning up online. They're meeting in real life. So like, it's kind of like there's an occulture beneath the occulture. That's a really clumsy sentence. But what I'm what I'm trying to say is that, like, what you see online is probably not reflection of what's happening, in kind of in real life.
I wonder, because we've sort of spoken about it loads on Sitting Now with various people, that the thing that kind of started me thinking this was, all of a sudden Kenneth Grant suddenly became very popular, and
Right.
I think the Starfire books are selling pretty well, and I see his
cool.
name popping up in all sorts of different places where his name didn't used to pop up.
Yeah.
And so I started to think, why is that? Why is all of a sudden Kenneth Grant very, very popular? Because prior to that, when I was in the ATO, for example,
Yeah.
he was a figure of mockery a lot of the time. He wasn't taken seriously at all.
Yeah.
He's the guy that put Lovecraft into Crowley and all this kind of stuff, and it's all whimsical kind of bad gematria and all this kind of stuff. And but then all of a sudden there's people from within that world are starting to find him interesting, and then I started to notice other groups becoming more, things like Scarlet Imprint stuff, like the more left-hand pathy, if you want to call it that, stuff, and like Tomas Vincente's kind of take on things. I'm starting to wonder, if is it just that people are it's fantastic, but are people less, is the kind of are the gatekeepers that used to kind of hold on to all of this kind of stuff, have they lost their grip now, and it really has gone kind of open source a bit more now, and people are picking and choosing a lot more, and
when you put it like that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's what it feels like to me. I mean, it's certainly what happened to me personally, and I just hadn't put the two together. I was like, because that's kind of how I approach it now, and it's I'm not bound by one particular system anymore, and it's much more fun, actually. It's much more, you can kind of build your own, the build a bear group, whatever, like you can kind of put stuff together, and I just wonder, because of the nature of the internet and the nature of this new generation that have kind of grown up with endless choice, I wondered if that's sort of actually going to end up affecting the culture, essentially, and maybe because there does seem to be a lot of younger people into it now as well, which is really interesting. It's not just the it's kind of
and like where I am kind of like meeting younger people. It's not often, but where I'm meeting younger people, like as a kind of Gen Xer, and I look at kind of Zoomers and kind of go, okay, look, they're just consuming this really short form content, and like the attention span, the effects of that, and those kind of thoughts are kind of they're quite prevalent. At the absolute same time, I've met lots of young people who, when I reflect on how I was at their age, are way more stable, like in control of themselves, like don't drink, this kind of stuff. I mean, when I was growing up, like literally, like if you weren't binge drinking, it was weird. That was totally normal. And kind of seen again. I mean, I don't meet many, but kids who don't do that kind of stuff at all. So it's there's different strengths, different characteristics that come with the generations. So I think we'll see that playing out in occult circles to some degree as well.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. It's really kind of, it's because I'm also a Gen Xer. When I was growing up, it was, your way into the occult was through something like the ATO, or through groups like, what were they called, the Chaos Magic, I always forget is it IoT? It was groups like that, that was your kind of way in.
Yeah.
And that's how you'd meet people, you'd go to
yeah
their events, or you'd go to book shop events and things like that. But now it just seems I just keep meeting people through through the show and stuff that are just, they know their stuff. They're not like, they're not tourists, but they're just not
extremely
interested.
well-read and experienced. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like they're just not interested in joining groups like the ATO anymore. Conversely, though, behind the scenes, I've been doing a lot of research into the Order of Nine Angles, and they've also become very big. They've got quite a big membership now.
Wow.
Which is the joke always used to be, the Order of Nine Angles are there, both of them. You know, it used to be that it was like no one was a member of the Order of Nine Angles. Right. It was like just the fantasy of David Wyatt or whatever. But no, not anymore. There's a lot of them.
Wow.
A lot of them. So it's kind of interesting. So on this one end, you've got this kind of weird democratized kind of like open source almost version of the occult, and then you have like these kind of shadowy groups that have suddenly become much more prevalent, and it's something's happening at the moment. I'm trying to put my finger on what it is.
Yeah, I think there is more of those shadowy groups. Like that's what I mean by that kind of the occulture kind of beneath the visible kind of internet occulture.